Hello there, welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to discuss one of the most popular business PC line in the market, the Dell Optiplex. I'm going to discuss the latest ones, which has Intel 12th gen processor inside. I know the Intel 13th gen has been released, but obviously it takes a while for the manufacturers to adopt them. So at this point in time, these are the latest in the market. I'm going to discuss the smaller size, the micro ones, and the small form factor, which is the medium size, and then the full-fledged tower size. I'm going to discuss the hardware, what has changed on the inside and the outside, and in terms of the software, I'm gonna run some benchmark just to see what kind of performance gains they have, so you can decide for yourself if it is worth it. Now, I'm gonna start with the entry model. As you might be aware that this particular line, they're divided in three: the entry level, which 3000, and then you got mid, which is 5000, and then the top level, which is 7000. So let's begin with the entry level one, Dell Optiplex 3000. So in my possession, I have the micro version of it, but don't worry, I've done enough research and they're pretty similar in sizes, so at the end you will get the idea of all different sizes. So just watch the video till the end. Now, what has changed at the front? The answer is not much. So you still have these two USBs, USB 3.2 Gen 1, the headphone jack, the power button. Not a lot going on at the front. At the back is also pretty similar to what you used to have. The only significant difference is the antenna. Unfortunately, the antenna design has changed, which is something I don't welcome, because every time there is an antenna design change, they're hard to obtain in the market and they're very expensive. I don't know why Dell doesn't do it like Lenovo and then keep the same model for years and years. So this way you can get off the market really cheap and upgrade yourself. But anyway, it is what it is. So this is how the new antenna looks. It's attached to the body itself. Before, it used to have a long antenna which you screw onto. Sorry, excuse the noise outside. So coming back to Dell Optiplex 3000 at the back, and I don't know if you mentioned already, so you get a display port and then HDMI. One important thing to note is that if you want the HDMI, this is the only model that does HDMI. Dell Optiplex 5000 and 7000, they do not have HDMI. They come with two display ports, and then with the USB you get 1 2 3 4 and 2 6 altogether. So the black ones, they're unfortunately USB 2.1 for peripherals like keyboard and the mouse, but these are obviously higher specs 3.2 Gen 1. You get your RJ45 Ethernet, and these are the ports. If you ever want additional display port, you can add them there, and you got Kensington locking system, or you can just simply lock it through there. So that's the on the outside of 3000. What's on the inside? The answer is things are pretty similar. Okay, so this is the fan, and that's where the CPU is, and this is the RAM. So the RAM still hasn't changed, just like the older model. These are 260 pins SODIMM. There are two slots in there, and then I think it can go up to I believe 128, but could be 64, just double check. And in terms of the SSD placement, with the 3000 model and the 5000, you only get altogether two SSD. One of them is 2.5 inch and another M.2 NVMe over there, and then you do get another M.2 slot for Wi-Fi. In terms of Wi-Fi, if you don't buy Wi-Fi built in, you can put your own card in that M.2 slot, and it can take up to Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.3. Now that's Dell Optiplex 3000. The entry level model is almost covered. Moving on to the 5000. The obvious difference is that 5000 and 7000, both of them, they come with USB-C. So if you are in need of USB-C, or if you want to use them with docking station and things like that, excuse me, then go for Dell Optiplex 5000 or 7000. Obviously they are slightly more expensive than the entry level. So what's different? So you get sorry, let me close that properly. Apologies. So you get an USB-C at the front and then just one USB at the front. So at the back again you get 4 more USB. These are all USB 3.2 Gen 1, and as I said earlier on, with the 5000 and 7000 you only get 2 display ports and standard Ethernet and the locking mechanism. On the inside, again, the RAM cooling system and the design is the same as the 3000. RAM sits under there. Again, same as the 3000. SODIMM 260 pin. One of the significant difference on the inside is the inclusion of the Gen 4 SSD for 5000 and 7000 model. You do not get that with the 3000. For 3000 you are only left with unfortunately Gen 3, which maxes up to 3.5 gigabits per second, but with the Gen 2 you get double the speed, which is 7.5 gigabits per second. So in terms of the SSD, you would notice in day-to-day life the performance improvement compared to the 3000. And if you are going for 7000, it is almost like the 5000, but the difference is you do get an additional M.2 slot. So altogether you will get 2 M.2 slot with 7000 model and one of the 2.5 inch standard hard drive. Okay, so altogether you could have 3 SSDs in the 7000. Okay, so moving on, so that's the micro covered. So moving on to the bigger sizes, to get the perspective of how big those bigger ones are, I'll pull a picture. So the middle one is called small form factor, and the one on the far left is called the tower PC. So the one on the far right is this size, a micro, and this is the small form factor, and that's the tower size. So in terms of the differences in the hardware, you do get additional, I think about 4 additional USB ports, and also you get the space for graphics card. Now be very careful if you intend to put graphics card in these ones. With the tower ones you can put a full-fledged one in there, but with the small form factor, the middle one, you have to make sure you buy a low profile GPU, which is like a miniature version of the main ones in there. You also have to be very careful because these two by default come with only 240 watts power supply. So do the calculation, and then if you want to, you can speak with Dell to get a higher wattage power supply. They can do 260 watt, 280 watt, or 400 watts. Okay, so that's all hardware covered almost. Now moving on to the second part of the hardware, the most important part, the processor. In this bit I should make you aware that according to Dell's specs sheet, they can pair these machines up with a range of processors. For example, Pentium i3, i5, i7 and i9. They say even within one processor, for example i5, there are different variations they can put in, like i5 12400T, 12500T, 12600T and things like that. So that's what they can do, they say. But unfortunately in the market, when you go to buy it off the shelf, the choices are limited. The choices are very, very limited. So from, at least in the UK market, if you're going for 3000, you can only get i3 or i5. If you're going for 5000, you can get i5 or i7. Again, just to make you aware, this is at this point as it stands, this is how they are doing it. Maybe going forward they will, or maybe if you message them for a custom order, they will do that for you. But off the shelf, this is what they're offering now. So you get i7, and if you buy 7000, you get again i5 and i7. They do say for 7000 model they can pair it with i9, but that's something you cannot buy off the shelf. That's a custom order at this point. So that's I should make you aware. I'm going to base my discussion on what you can get off the shelf, but I'm just making you aware in case you want the custom made one. Okay, so now moving on to the CPU. If you go for the Dell Optiplex 3000, as I said earlier on, you can get i3 or i5. If you're going for an i3 version, then you will get 4 cores and 8 threads. You wouldn't get these fancy efficiency cores. Okay, so these will have base clock speed of 220 GHz and turbo of 410, which is quite decent for office work and things like that. It is quite capable. Now if you want to go for a slightly higher specs processor and go to i5, then you would get slightly higher cores, 6 cores and then 12 threads, and then base clock is 2.0, and then turbo is higher than i3, which is 4.40 gigahertz. Okay, now if you decided to buy 5000 and 7000, you could go for i7. Now this is where the jump is in terms of specs. So you get this fancy efficiency cores which you don't get with i5 or i3. So you get 8 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, and a lot of threads, 20 of them. Okay, and in terms of base clock is 1 or 1.40 for efficiency and performance respectively, but in terms of turbo it can reach up to 470 for the performance ones, but the efficiency one can get up to 340. So this is what you get with the micro models, by the way. So that's what it is, and I'm not going to discuss what you can get with i9 because that's a custom order, but you can look it up online. But with the micro machines, I wouldn't suggest i9s because of the thermal system. Is really for i9 it might be a bit too much, so probably stick with this 3. Now in terms of the bigger ones, with the smaller ones, again you only get 35 watt TDP processor. So if you go for the bigger ones, you get 65 watts TDP processor. So those are beefy ones. And in terms of the core counts and the thread counts, they're the same as their smaller siblings, but the difference is in actual speed count. So for example, an i3 of 35 watt would get you 4.10 gigahertz turbo, but with the bigger ones you get 4.30 gigahertz turbo. Even though the difference is not much in terms of the numbers, but since these bigger ones, they do have beefy cooling in them, you would see a significant performance jump. Okay, now moving on to the performance benchmarks. I've done this on both Cinebench as well as the Geekbench. They say Geekbench put a lot of pressure on the CPU, so you would get an idea of how you would perform under pressure. So if you look at the Cinebench's single core, you would see I compared it with Dell 3080, which is a 10th gen processor. There is a huge jump. Now you might say, why did you compare it with 2 generation older? First of all, I don't have 11th gen with me. Second of all, in the market, for some reason, at least in the UK, Dell didn't market 11th gen Optiplexes for some reason. I'm not sure why. They didn't market them as well as the 3080s. So 3080 is very common in the offices and organizations. So it's probably a better comparison. So if you look at the 3080 versus 3080 i5 versus 3000 i5, there is a huge jump in performance. It's, I think, about 70 to 80% in the single core performance jump. And this is backed by Geekbench as well. So if you look at the Geekbench's single core, again you will see the similar kind of thing, a huge jump. It's about 60 to 80%. Sorry, 60 to 80, yeah, of single core. So single core is very important for day-to-day tasks like, browsing, opening Excel, Microsoft Word documents, things like that. So you would see a huge performance jump if you're upgrading from a 10th gen or lower. Now, when it goes to multi-core, the performance jump from 10th gen is still almost significant. It's about 30% or so. Similar kind of picture on Geekbench as well. The multi-core jumps about 25 to 30%. So it is still significant. But if you compare the multi-core of i7, that's where you will see a huge jump. Okay, as you can see, compared to this one, this is close to 90%. Same story here. So huge multi-score jump. So my suggestion would be, if you are buying for your PC for application that uses multi-core or heavy application, I would say go for the i7. Otherwise i5 is quite capable. So that's it, to be honest. This is my first video of comparison, so I do apologize if it wasn't the best, but yeah, as we learning curve, I guess. We do sell these PCs in the market almost at half the price. Please do check our eBay accounts out. Thank you very much for watching. Alright, now let's talk performance. In terms of performance, in this one I've made a comparison with older 10th gen processor. The reason I didn't do it with 11th gen is, first of all, I don't have access to 11th gen machine as we speak, and also in the market, for some reason, Dell didn't market 11th gen in the UK at least. So 10th gen is very common, so I would actually compare it with something that's more common in the market. And I have also used the Geekbench as well as the Cinebench, because with Cinebench it puts more pressure in the CPU, so it also gives you an overview of how the machine would perform under stress. So the most obvious differences I've noticed compared to 10th gen to the 12th gen is a huge jump in single core, and single core performance jump would actually benefit you in day-to-day tasks like browsing the internet, opening Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel documents, emails and stuff like that. So most of the office stuff, you will see a huge performance jump. But when it comes to multi-core, there is a jump as well. So there is a jump of about between 25 to 30% across both of the platform I used to benchmark. So that's a significant jump as well. So with the single core, the jump was between 70 to 80%, and for multi-core the jump was between 25 to 30%. So I got the graphs up here. So if you look at the Cinebench first, you will see it scored an i5 10th gen scored just below 1000, and then an i5 12th gen it scored about 1700, just above 1700. And this is backed by Geekbench as well, because you would see the similar sort of performance jump. So this is on Geekbench is scored about 12 something, and then a 12th gen one scored 2100. Okay, so that's again a huge jump of around 70%, I believe. So as I said, it's very apparent that from 10th gen to 12th gen, single core has made a huge jump, and in terms of multi-core, they did make a jump as well, but that's about 30%, which is quite significant. Now I put the i7 there just out of curiosity, because obviously I don't have another i7 to compare it with. But if you look at it, you will see in terms of single core, there is not much difference between an i5 and i7, but when it comes to multi-core, there is a huge difference. So if you are buying the PC for a CPU intensive task or application that utilizes multi-core, then go for i7. Alright, thank you so much for watching. This is my first comparison video, so I've still got some learning to do, so apologies if it wasn't perfect. I do apologize for the noise in the background as well. There's a lot of construction works going on, and also I do sell these PCs in the market, often at a half price of what Dell is charging you, with long warranty remaining, most of the machines still unused or barely used. So do check out our eBay account linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching.